Okay, so last time we looked at making this React component that when it gets mounted into the DOM, that it retrieves the exchange rate for Bitcoin in US dollars and two other currencies as well, but it only displays the US dollars rate. And then, so we built a component to do that. And I glanced at that this morning, and it's not quite finished. It's an organizational issue there. So under mmap here, there's let's see here. That's good. That's good enough. Under views, the user's view, and then we added a script element here. And the script type is text/Babel. That's the identifier for the JSX syntax. And then what we did was we defined a class called Bitcoin, which extends the React component class. That's how you make components. And the render method just inserts a div with exchange rate in it. So it's very simple, with a little text, small amount of text. So this could be improved, of course, with CSS, whatnot. And then the component did mount. That's a function that gets called when the component is sort of like activated and inserted into the document. And we create a new XML so when the component is mounted, it's ready to display. It's ready for render. It can now be called. But before we call render the first time, this function, component did mount, which is a type of event. This event handler will run first. We create an instance of this XML HTTP request, and that's a bit of a misnomer. You can think XML that's too narrow. It actually supports other file formats such as JSON and others. So let's really think of this as an HTTP request class or constructor. Then you get this request object. And then we can register an event listener on it. So when the load method is triggered, then that means we got the data. And so we register the load event listener. And then after we do that, of course, this does not run. This just defines a function which gets set aside, and we say call that function, when the load event happens. So this code here doesn't run, but this code is running. That is running. So event add listener is being called. That's being passed the string LOAD, and it's being passed a reference to this function. It doesn't execute the function. It compiles it. It assembles it. And then so after we register the event listener, then we need to register the URL and the method, the HTTP method that's used to interact with that URL. So in this case, we're going to just do the get method. And then we call send on the request object. That makes everything happen. And then a few moments later, the load event will occur because we'll have retrieved the data from this URL. The load method then runs, and we have this field, and the request object gets populated by the response text. So we can pull that out. That's the raw text. The body is the body of the HTTP response message that comes back from the server, the Bitcoin server. And so we pull that raw text out, pass it into the JSON parse method, and it converts it into a JavaScript object for us. It's very convenient. And we refer to that as result data or response data. And then the response data is got different pieces of information in it. We looked at it last time. And we did that by simply pasting this into the browser and examining the result. You know, it just gives you this JSON. It's a string, just a JSON object right there. And you drill into it. When this gets converted into it's converted into a JavaScript object in a very straightforward way. And that's what this refers to, is that JavaScript object that gets constructed out of the JSON. Then we drill down to get to the value that we want as BPI, USD, rate underscore float. And then we just for convenience, we label that rate. And then we change the state of the component. So we set a new rate. And when you change the state of a component, that means its render method is going to be called at some point. So the render method will be called, and the new exchange rate will be displayed. So that's how React works with JavaScript. Well, in this component did mount method. There's other ways you could execute this code, as a result of a button click, form submission, and anything. You could just call that whenever you like. That doesn't have to be when the component mounts. But you don't want to do it before the component mounts, because then it won't render. Once you call set state, I don't think it'll render. And it may set the state, but maybe it doesn't render, or maybe it crashes. I don't know. And so anyway, this thing is inside the what do you call it? The pug file. I wanted to take it out and make this an external script. Okay, let's take a look at that. Let's see what that looks like. Let's try to pull that out. We're just going to reorganize. So here we are, and we go into that views folder and open up that users file. So this script here, I'm going to take this out. And let's see, that's in, where would we put this? Where would we put this? Well, it's going to be a static resource, I guess you can call it. And we'll retrieve it, through the web server, through that static content middleware that we configured. And so we're going to create a new file. Let's call it bitcoin.js. And here it is. So we're going to load this thing. Now I got to think about how to do this. I'll just collapse that down. So let's leave this. Let's see. Let's change that to this. You know what? I'm going to straighten that out later. Just for now, just leave it like that. And so let's before I do anything more, let's just run this thing. going on here? Anybody know what the problem is? So it says connection refused. So it can't connect. What is this? So we start and we throw this, throw an error here. Oh, this is, I think there's a note in here. It doesn't say anything. So the problem is the database. If you look here, it's roots index.js line 20. Let's take a look at that. This is the error gets thrown right here. So we call get password on this database, and an error is returned. Now we have the database connection, and what I like to do, and I'll show that to you before we jump in to solve that other problem. This error message is very hard to read. The problem is that the database is not running, right? So you got to run that. But it's hard to figure out that error message. So what I'm going to do is have like an init method that just tests the database connection. We'll call that when we start the app up right away. So we don't wait for the first request to come in to see the application crash. We want to see it crash earlier. We want to see it crash right away when we open up we start the server. I'll call it init. And init has a callback function. So we're going to connect. So it's just like this. So we're going to connect, and then we have a callback function, which looks like this. You know, this is the other syntax. You could also do it like this. Let's see. But I should be consistent. I don't want to have too many of these. So let's change that. We'll make this like this. There we go. Just to make them consistent. So when we connect, then if there's an error, then what we want to do, and we'll do console dot error. Or is it ERR? I think that's what it is. Well, it could just be LOG, right? This writes to the standard output stream, but we could write to the standard error stream. It's that or that. I don't know which one it is. We'll try both of them. And is a database running? So we'll ask that question. And then we'll throw the error. Otherwise, what we're going to do, what we could return, let's see, is actually maybe what we'll do is, hold on there. We just call the callback. If everything's all right, we just call the callback and say we're fine. Still, it's not the best solution, but we can refine it. We'll start this up again. Now, well, wait a minute. There's a missing thing here. Let's see. That would be, we have missing right here. Right there. Should fail right away, but it doesn't. Oh, that's because we didn't call a init. We got to call a init. So inside main, well, it's not main. What was it called? App. Inside main, we have to call this. So once we load this, we're going to need to load it. Let's do it like this. We can just do it like this. I'll do it like this. I'll do db.init. You know what? We don't need the callback. Do we need that callback function? It's probably good to have. Just does nothing. Maybe we don't need that callback function. Let's leave that out. I changed my mind about that. It's unnecessary. Well, we could put it in there and make things easier to read. Let's see. No, I guess it's all right. Just like that, it's fine. And then we'll import it here. There we go. So I want this to crash right when we start this thing up. Because the database is not running, we should be able to detect that when we try to start the application. Cannot find module DB. That's, where's DB? It's right there, isn't it? Oh, .db. It should be ./db. So it needs an absolute path name here. Well, it needs yeah, and this says it needs a fully qualified path name. But what's the right way to say it? We have to tell it to look in the current folder for a user-provided module. That's different than these other modules they're in the node modules folder. That's where they're retrieved from. But when you want the system to load a module that's not in the node modules folder, then you have to tell it where to look. And there it is the database running? This is what I want to say, right? Console error is not a function. What? Okay, so that's what we'll do then. It's error spelled out. There we go. I mean, you should be able to see that. Is the database running? I think it's probably enough. We could cut all this other stuff out. We catch the error, I just squelch it and return, and then we could shut down and just display this is the database running. And well, maybe it's another error. I don't know. But this shows the details of what the error are. It's basically connection refused. See, this is the local host is the URL, and that's the port number that's the default port number for Postgres. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's good enough. That is good enough. So we got that running, and then I'm going to commit that change. I'm not going to put the Bitcoin in there yet because we didn't debug that yet. So I just added the app and the DB files. And so then I'll push that. People can look at it. And you'll see that I didn't put the Bitcoin code in there yet, so I just left it like that. All right. Let's get this figured out now. So go back into views. Oh, we should test that the app runs. Let me start the database. So it's Postgres. Where would that be? What? CB is not a function. All right. I committed too early. So it's in DB, isn't it? Yeah, DB. So here, remember I took out that callback, and so I just leave that out. Oops. Now it works. But you know, I committed something that's not quite right. So I look at it like that. I'll just, let me just be disciplined about it. Just commit that fix. I'll even push it. All right. Okay. All right, so now we're inside here. And, you know, rather than defining this thing in here, we're going to load it as an external script. So the source is Coinbase.js. Is that what it was called? Coinbase? No, Bitcoin, sorry, not Coinbase. Bitcoin.js. So I put it in the public folder. Right? I don't need that dot there because there's no text following it. I don't know exactly what that dot does, but it lets you specify element contents, I think. You know, between the start tag and the end tag goes after that dot. Okay, let's see if this works. The server is running. And go back to this page. Oh, I better open up the JavaScript console because, you know, I want to be able to see what's going on, and I also want the caching to be disabled. Yeah, so login. Okay. There it is. It's working. It works. It's good. So now that simplifies that that pug file. See, there's the pug file. I don't really want to be dropping all that script in there. Also, this could be used. That script could just be dropped in any page that we want Bitcoin to be displayed. Bitcoin part. So we could reuse it like this. Okay. And I guess I can commit that. Git add dot. Dot gets everything that's listed there. So I'll show you git status now. See, now it's green. It's been staged. Now we're going to commit it. and then we'll push it. Right. And what I was thinking about doing today was to expand this application. So in addition to login, that we have like user registration. So a new user can come in, create an account with their email. Yeah, so we can keep track of that. So that's what I wanted to do. But before I launch into that, I wanted to check with Eric there. Eric, what's going on? I know I chatted with Eric today about some of his research. He's looking at state management middleware, would you call it? State management systems, anyway, that you can tack on to React to make React easier to work with. Did you want to say a few?
Easier depending on the size of the application. But that mailing list I showed you guys the other day, it's becoming no longer simple. And as I'm starting to turn it into like a full-fledged mailing list kind of application, I have so much state that needs to be shared to a bunch of different components that you have to share it through components like down the tree until it gets to the component it's at. I'm using a state management system called MobX. Redux is another one, but I found that MobX is a lot simpler, and it's a lot more flexible, and you write significantly less code to pretty much do the same thing. And what it lets you do is basically define your state independently from your program's view app. You can take a look at the MobX branch. Change the branch to MobX. That's the one I was working on recently. It's really simple, and essentially it's letting me completely remove state from my apps. So, like, instead of having to share state down the tree, I can just have each component pull state from different stores. It's not. You go to Simple Mailer. Go back. It's an SRC, and then my stores are in the store folder. And those are the MobX stores. Connection state store is real simple. Subscriber store I haven't finished yet. App state store is the current one that app state store is the main one that you want to look at. Connection state store just shares some connection real good. And this one basically is just a class that you like. Instead of describing all of your state in React, you use something like MobX here. You're defining your state as a class, and each of these class members here, these variables here that aren't given any sort of like they don't say const or var or let or anything like that. They're class members. So this is essentially the state of my app, just the app. I have subscribers and a bunch of stuff elsewhere. So I have this one. This is where my actual API connects to now. Instead of the interface itself, it connects to a backend, then controls the front end. So it's a little more complicated, but it lets me write less in the long run. Although this seems like a lot, it does. But doing stuff this way, it helps you prevent you from making your code do things it shouldn't, having bugs and stuff like that. Though with this one here, MobX is a little different than Redux. Redux is something else that does kind of the same thing like this, but it uses functional programming, which is actually quite fun once you really start to understand it. Because it's like, think about programming, but you don't have loops. Imagine how you do stuff like that. You don't have loops, and you don't have side effects. So functions can only take an input and only output something. They can't change anything else.
Isn't Redux more widely used?
Redux is more widely used, but
because it's older.
MobX is a lot easier. It solves the same problem. Redux has a higher learning curve. Like MobX, I just started looking at MobX this morning.
You're already writing code.
Yeah.
So MobX is more recent, right?
Yeah, MobX is more recent. Redux takes in an older state management thing from Facebook called Flux. It applies Redux. It applies reducers to it, which are a functional programming concept. In functional programming, you basically have filter. You basically have like 4 functions that you can use. You can do everything with filter, reduce, map, and sort. And that's pretty much all you need to do stuff like
so
that.
This
so it's a little different, but this is a lot easier to use. And you don't really need this for simple applications. So I'm getting ahead of the curve and how my app works. And so I've been moving all the state to this. So if you actually inspect this with the React developer tool, you'll find that there's no state. None of the components have a state except for a couple of them, like if a accordion or like a menu is open.
They don't have state. They have observers attached to.
Yeah, it's observers. If anybody's used C++ with the observer pattern, where you have a document, you have like a document over here, like an object model, or just basically a set of data that can change, and you can attach observers to it with C++ from another file, so that whenever any changes are made to this, the stuff in this file gets called. And
yeah,
that's basically what this lets you do.
Yeah.
So it basically just
it's
adds
simpler.
a C++ pattern to it. It's real easy.
Because with React, you got like a tree, and if you have two components that need to access the same kind of new data that comes in, you got to push the new data up to a common parent.
Can you go to my? Can you go back to the back one more, and go to the app.js? I can show you how you got a bunch of stuff here. So I have the observer here, my state store here, and then I created an instance of the state store. I'm eventually getting rid of this because I'm in the process of refactoring this. If you scroll down more, you use something called decorators normally. But with the Create React app, you have to define it a little differently. So you keep scrolling down, just scroll. This thing's like 400 lines. Oh wait, up here. So you export default. You attach an observer to your class. And that's basically it. You attach an observer to your class, and then you have your store object up there.
So you put the state right in like here.
That's the state that I haven't gotten to yet. Those are your own stores. This one is a list of subscribers. This one is a list of results as they're being mailed out. It builds a list of the results, so you have an interface that shows you how to do this. This is a list of all the mailers that have ever been sent out. Because I have a history in this one now, and this is all of this is another database here that I have all of the mailer history results. It's a database where I have all of the mailer history has a results array in it that is just it basically just takes the key, the primary key. So in this one it's an ID. Basically takes the primary key of a list of results that says the user's email, and then if it got sent or not.
I think that's enough on that. We don't want to get into too many more details because people are going to probably be using that. But I got to say, when I visualize this whole thing, I see this as more like a graph, that anybody can subscribe as an observer to any piece of data. And so you got lots of lines going anywhere. But when you use React without one of these approaches, you have to push, common state up to a shared parent. And so that's the problem you got with in the game development that they got when they were using game objects. So it's really convenient when you're doing game programming to think in terms of game objects. And you got all these game objects in a class hierarchy where the orc extends enemy, which extends humanoid, which extends walkable, which extends flyable, whatever they got. What happens is they create these gigantic trees, and the leaves on the bottom of the tree need to share things in common. So all those common elements get pushed up toward the root of the tree. As the tree gets bigger, more and more it gets pushed up to the root, and the whole thing becomes a big mess, and it's no longer.
If you scroll all the way to the bottom, you can see that the big mess is still there in some way. You scroll all the way down to where it renders it. So I'm using router. So if you go up there, there's my list of props that have to be passed through each router. So I still haven't gotten rid of the prop structure. So I need to.
Well, if you have reusable components that can be configured, and you need props for that, right?
Most of them aren't really reusable. Only a couple are reusable. But I mean, it's not like you see like all this stuff that I have to move down here.
Well, it's either that or you got to give them access to this. You make these global, right? I mean,
you don't want to do globals though.
Well, then you pass them in as properties. So what else are you going to do?
What you do is instead you attach the observer. You use your whenever that changes, whenever you make a call to that or change
Oh.
anything, it updates the state of this application through the observer.
All right, I think that's good. That's excellent. Good first hit. You know, because I had no idea. I don't even know what Redux does, but now I got a better idea because we're talking about MobX, which is similar, right? It solves a similar problem. And I want to get back to this registration. So we're going to do some coding, and we're going to get registration. And I haven't used this mailer yet, Eric, so you can help us when we get to that point where we're going to do some. We're going to interact with the mailing because I haven't done that from Node ever. All right, so you can help me with that.
I have a really simple module that, real simple.
Well, we got to write everything from scratch, a line at a time. Okay, so
I got a real simple helper. If you go up, you go to SRC,
Yeah.
go back to server. It's in the server. Go to simple mailer, and then server, and then go to helper, lib, lib, and then helpers. Well, actually, no, emailer is the one you want. That's a different helper. This is emailer. Email real simple.
well, we'll need this. I know that, right? That's to send out an email, and we'll get back to this when we need it. Okay.
That's all you need to send an email though.
Well, that's it right there. So we basically we get the node mailer module. All right, and then what do we do? Well, there's a configuration we got to pass in, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you require the configuration?
Yeah. Otherwise, it doesn't know what to do. The configuration it's constructed from environment variables. If you take a look at it.
Wait, did you write this?
Yeah, I wrote all of this. Yeah.
I mean, this one here. So I see. So you wrote that as a module. You wrote the email configuration as a module. You didn't.
Yeah.
You don't want to just pack it right in here?
No.
Okay.
Because I want to be able to use it other ways.
Oh, you use it for other.
Yeah.
I got it.
This also lets me have a file that can be configurable by the user.
Hmm.
And basically, emailer config is. I could probably pass it into that, but it just calls up a bunch of
Let me take a look at that. So dot
You went .env. Oh, yeah, it's
config. How much you got in there? You got two of them in there, right? Oh, is this like passwords and stuff? Sorry.
No, it's no passwords.
Okay, sorry.
No passwords. I
All
don't
right.
store anything sensitive.
Oh yeah, it was a public anyway. It was a
everything's
public
stored in
repository.
.env.
So what the heck is that?
That's .env. One of the most helpful things ever. It lets you store all of your environment variables in a folder that you can exclude, or a file that you can exclude.
Yeah.
And then you call process.env anywhere on your server side, and you can pull up those results through that. So what I do is I take that .env file.
Yeah.
It's ignored by Git. So when I distribute this, you have to create your own .env file as a boilerplate in the README file,
Yeah.
and then it pulls that information from there. And eventually, it's going to pull this information from the database instead when I set up multiple users. So people can have multiple user accounts and multiple campaigns for mailings and stuff.
All right, so that is okay. So actually, oh, so through the environment you set up the.
There's a .env file.
Yeah.
The .env is one of the most popular. I think actually number 2 or 3 on Node.
But isn't this process that's a
That's a Node thing.
that's built into Node? You don't have to you don't have to require that.
No, you require it up there at the top.
This did it right here.
Yeah, that does it.
All right. That defined this. That
That
made that defined.
It's process.env.
Okay. All right. So let's do this registration thing, and then we're going to come back to this code. We're going to need to take a look at this again as part of our solution. I guess we'll just use this mmap here, and let's talk about how we're going to do this. All right, that's running, right? And then so here we have the app, and we log in, and then we log out. Now, if in addition to log in, we're going to add registration link. Okay, let's do that. How do I do? I can do a break. Is it a BR like that? Is that a break?
Doing
Yeah.
yeah.
So this is register. Okay. All right. That come through? Yes. Now it's going to be similar to login, right? It's going to have a form, and then it's going to have, when the form gets submitted, you're going to have a form processing. So what we did is we put both of those for login. We put both activities in that one module, and or in that one route, I guess we'll say, and or that one URL. So we'll do the same thing with register. So basically, we're gonna have to. What we'll do is we'll copy. Let's do it like that. We'll copy the login form, register.pug. We'll make a copy of the login form and use it for registration, and we'll morph that copy and turn it into what we need. All right, so I made that copy, and then it would be inside the routes. There's going to be, it's an index. This is the login, so I think, well, let me do it like this. I'm going to just copy all this login business. And log out. I'll go underneath log out, and I'll go down here. This will be the registration. So let's go that. Let's register. I'll basically just doing a replace. All right, down here is something else. So this is where things get submitted. So we'll just leave it alone for now. And oh, this is a post here. So we'll make registration act just like login. All right. Now what do we do? Oops. So inside, we have to modify the app code. I think so. No, maybe not. No, we don't do anything here, do we? Basically, we're done, I think. Restart this. No error message there. And login, we're just checking login. Login works normally, and then log out. Now, and registration should be exactly the same. Let's see. So we register, and it looks like a login, and then we log out. There we go. So anyway, now we're gonna morph that registration code and turn it into something else. And let's go into the views, and this should be, oh, the action goes to login. Should go to register. Register. That's a better test. Let me see if it still works. Yeah, that's good. Okay. And then so we have, say, the user has to pick a username and a password, and then submit. I mean, it's the same thing, right? Maybe we want a duplicate, right? You enter the, oh no, we need an email. So we need an email. So this is one. And there's your email. And the email is, what am I going to use for email? So the email and the value will be, I'll leave it A for now. I'll put my email in there later. Okay. And then we could actually see that now. We go to register. Here's the email, username, password. And I'm not going to do any CSS business, any formatting. I'm just going to let it be a little sloppy. Okay. Now we got to process what comes back. So we're going to, I think it's in, no, it's in the app. I think it's right in here. Oh no, it's not in the app. It's in that router, right? Have to go in the routes. Here it is. Okay. So this is where we process login, and this is log out. This is where we process registration. We don't have to do anything with this. Maybe just fix the title there, make it uppercase. And then it's just the post. Get rid of that comment. We got a user ID, but we had that email. Over to email. And it's coming in as email. It's the name of it. And this is the submitted password. We don't need to do submitted password because there's no password in the database to look at, so we just call it password. And there won't be a get password here. It'll be, we got to check to see if the email is already registered. We got to check if the user ID is already registered, right? All that stuff has to be done, but we're not going to do it now. We're just going to, we'll have to add that stuff later. So we won't call get password. What we're going to do is we'll do something like create user. We pass in the user ID. I'll put the email first because that's how I listed it, and the user ID and the user's password. And then we have the callback method. Which is, if it fails, it'll give us an error. If it succeeds, it tells us nothing. If an error comes in, we'll throw the error. And the create user may fail. So actually we don't want to, we can do it as, how do we, so in other words, when we call create user, we might as well do that now. Let's do that now. Let's create user fail if the user ID and the email already exist. Now let's wait. We'll do it later. We can do it later. Let's just assume that the user types in any unique email and user ID. We'll do the checking later. So if there's an error, we throw the error. If it's good, do we log the person in when they register, or do we make them log in? Well, the easiest thing to do is just log them in automatically, right? So let's do that. And there we go. So we're going to add a method called create user to our database module. Pass in the email, user ID, and password. If there's an error, then we're going to shut down. Otherwise, we're going to log the user in. So that we have to define that create user now. Here's get password. I'm going to copy get password. And let's make this the create user function. And that create user function takes an email, a user ID, and a password. And we connect, and this all is good. And then here we do a query, and it won't be a select. It's going to be insert. Insert. I don't remember the syntax. Let me kill this. There it is. Insert into users. See, there it is right there. In fact, we got to change this around. Now that I think about it, we have to add another field to the database called email. And this should be not null. It should be unique as well, right? Not null and unique. This should be unique. Is that in Postgres? How do I set a key? This is not a primary key. It's just going to be its own key. How do I specify email as a key? Everybody know how to do that? I'll have to look that up. I want to make Eric, how do I do that? Look, you know this. You took the database class. You were the TA for databases.
I know, but I don't use Postgres.
Well, just the SQL. We don't need, I mean, I think it's SQL. Basically, the user ID is primary key. But I want the email to be indexed. So how did I define an index on the email?
It's been so long, I don't remember.
All right, so we're going to look it up. Actually, we'll do it later. Let's do it later. Okay, insert into users, user ID, password, email. I'm just going to put in bogus email here for now. Something like that. That's A and B. All right. And we got to actually run that thing. So is that like? Oh yes, I gotta. How do I run the? How do I run that thing? It's PSQL. I don't have a note on how to run that. It's PSQL minus D for database. Map. And then localhost. I'm not sure if I need that. And I can't remember how to do this now. So read in create DB. Is that how I do it? Relation users does not exist. So create table users. Drop table users. Oh, I got the wrong database. What's the name of the database? It's abort that. Name of the database is what the heck? It's map, right? The host is localhost. Map. Maybe I just do this. What the heck? How do I open this up? I can't remember the syntax for this. Is it minus uppercase D? Yeah. So I want to show the tables. It's DT, I think, slash DT. There are no tables here? How do I get out of here? I'm going the wrong way. It should be slash DT like that. Okay, no relation. So it's empty. The database is empty. So how do I get out of here? It's backslash Q, I think. Yeah, there it is. So there's something wrong with the command here. And I'll try the user as Turner. I'll try that too. Invalid option. Table users does not exist. A syntax error on line 4. Email, at or near email. Oh, I see. I'm missing the comma. Sorry. There it is. But now drop table users won't work, so I need to temporarily take that out. And now we'll try it PSQL minus D map. Map, it's MAPP. There we go. Now if I put this back in again, now the script should be back to normal. Deletes the table and then recreates it. That's good. So that's done. Wait a minute. This is create user. So in create user, we need to use that insert. So it's insert into users, and then we use this syntax right here. Insert into users. Let's double check that. So parenthesis and then values. So this will be user ID, password, email. Insert into users. Values. And it'll be, say, I don't know, we don't need that number 1 there. What we need here, what the heck is this? This should be, oh, I see. This is the query. Insert, yeah. This should be, what's it, $1, comma, $2, comma, $3. These are placeholders. And then semicolon, I think that may be optional. Then we got to pass in the array here. This will be user ID, comma, password, comma, email. Now this string is getting too big here, so I'm going to break it up a bit. I'm going to do let SQL equal, and I'm going to copy that thing. It's just a string. And now I could delete this. I just passed the string in. It's just a little easier to read. And we could probably keep it on 1 line here. I'll go with the other syntax here. It's not a big deal. Okay. And then, so we run this query. and we get the result. Now the result should be, the result set, actually there is no result, right? I think it's, is it query? When you run an insert command, you pass it into query, client.query, is that right, Eric? That's still a query, right? Yeah, yeah. It just doesn't return a result set, that's all. Okay, I think we're all right.
Results coming back null.
Well, there's no result. We just want to know whether it succeeded or not. So maybe there is.
It should return a result, which would be the item in the database.
Maybe the thing that got
and pass that to callback. So
yeah.
you want to take that information and pass it back to your user interface to give you a result.
I think the result is. Well, let's look at what. I mean, if we just did an insert, let's do PSQL map here. And if I do DT, this shows relations. There's just one at users. So I'm going to select star from users. And I do insert. So I do it like this. See that select. When I do a select command, it generates a result set. See, and the result set has 2 rows. And that's what we get when we use the API, that PG module, the API, that PG module. So let's see if we do an insert. So we're going to insert into users values. I'm going to do this the shorthanded way. C, C, C. Let's see if it shows the result set after I do this. Well, when I do the select here, it just gives me a result set, doesn't it? And then when I do insert, it shows me this. So I don't know what this is. Insert 0, 1. Anyway. Let's come back to here. I'm not gonna, we'll just check for error here. And if it's an error, we call the callback, pass in the error, and then we return. And this is checking, I don't know what the thing returns, so we're gonna have to do some investigation on that. So here we say, we just have to call the CV, that's it, with nothing. There we go. Just call the callback to tell the calling code that we're done. We inserted the new user. I think we got everything. So it's, I'm going to rerun, I'm going to get rid of that thing I inserted in there. So PSQL map PSQL that's the database, and then I use, there we go, good, that's enough. If you're on Windows, you may need to specify the username and things like that, but on Mac, it's a little different. All right, let's start it up, test it. We're going to register. Look at that. It works. Well, we don't do any error checking at all. We don't even do like, we're not doing email confirmation or anything like that. We just getting something really simple working. So there it is. So it's you know, if I do what is it, PSQL map and select star from users, there's C. We put it in there. Let's just do this again. Here's just going to be X, X, and the password is going to be SSSSS. Submit. And then I rerun this. There's X. So that's working. And we have some intermediate result here. And what we can do is we could commit that, take a snapshot of what we have done here. See, one benefit of taking these snapshots is that as you're going along, if you mess things up and delete files or do something wrong or go down the wrong road, you just revert back to your last snapshot. So it's very good to make these snapshots. See, I got a running prototype here. I just take a snapshot of it right there. And for people who want to take a look at it, I'll push. 512. We will continue this next time because we're going to have to do the emailing and add more steps to the whole process. Okay, so that's it for today. All right, that's it. Any questions? No.